If you grew up watching television anytime in the last 40 years, you know the visual. A sterile laboratory, a perfectly pristine sanitary pad, and a mysterious glowing blue liquid being poured onto it from a beaker. For decades, the advertising industry convinced us that this Windex-colored water was the universal symbol for menstruation. They told us it was just about being polite, about sanitizing something that wasn't meant for polite, public, or let's be honest, male consumption. But that blue liquid wasn't just a marketing gimmick to protect your sensibilities. It was a cover-up for one of the most enraging medical oversights in modern history. Because that blue liquid, water and saline, was exactly what multi-billion-dollar corporations were actually using to test their products in the lab. For nearly 100 years, from the invention of the modern tampon until August of 2023, no one had ever tested period products using actual human blood. Welcome back to Let's Make It Interesting. Today we are unpacking the Century-Long Tampon Scam and how the advertising industry's obsession with blue liquid led to decades of medical gaslighting for millions of women. Back in the 1920s and 30s, menstruation wasn't just a taboo. It was advertised as a literal disease, a handicap. The very first disposable maxi pads were sold with silent purchase coupons. The idea was that you could cut the coupon out of a magazine, hand it to the pharmacist, and buy your products without ever having to speak the dirty, shameful words out loud. By the time television advertising rolled around in the latter half of the 20th century, the FCC and network executives, rooms completely filled with men, were terrified of reality. They needed a way to show absorbency without showing anything that reminded people of actual human biology. Enter the blue liquid. Why blue? Because in the psychology of advertising, blue subconsciously signals fresh, clean, and sterile. It is the color of window cleaner and mouthwash. It is the exact opposite of human blood. But this didn't just sell pads, it sold shame. It taught an entire generation of women that their natural biology was so inherently disgusting that it had to be censored, sanitized, and color-corrected by a corporate advertising board before it could even be acknowledged. For that, we have to go back to 1982 to something called the Tampon Task Force. In the late 70s and early 80s, there was a deadly spike in toxic shock syndrome. Women were getting incredibly sick, and some were dying, because corporations were putting entirely unregulated, hyper-absorbent synthetic materials into their products. The FDA finally stepped in. They told manufacturers they had to standardize their absorbency ratings. A super tampon had to mean the exact same thing across all brands, so women knew what they were putting in their bodies. But here is where the manipulation comes in. Real human blood is expensive. It requires specialized biohazard training to handle. It clots, it varies in viscosity, it has cellular mass, it is unpredictable. Do you know what is cheap, perfectly consistent, and requires zero effort to test? Saline. Salty water. The industry set the standard right then and there. They decided that saline was a perfectly fine substitute for menstrual blood. And for the next 40 years, every single leak-proof guarantee, every heavy flow promise printed on the side of a box was based on how well that product absorbed literal water. It took a century, but the illusion finally broke in August of 2023. Enter Dr. Bethany Samuelson-Bano and her team at Oregon Health and Science University. They decided to do the one thing multi-billion-dollar corporations absolutely refuse to do. They tested period products with real blood. Using expired packed red blood cells, they tested 21 different products: tampons, pads, menstrual cups, discs, and period underwear. The results? The corporations were lying. Because blood is vastly thicker and more complex than water, Almost every single product absorbed significantly less than the box claimed. That heavy-duty pad, it held a fraction of what the saline test promised. And that heavily marketed, expensive, super absorbent period underwear that is supposed to replace tampons entirely, it barely held 2 milliliters of blood. The absorbency ratings printed on the boxes weren't just a little bit off. They were a complete corporate fiction. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so I have to buy more tampons. Annoying. But is it a scandal? Yes. Because this wasn't just false advertising. This was medical sabotage. For decades, doctors have used a very specific metric to diagnose heavy menstrual bleeding, which is the primary symptom of severe conditions like endometriosis, fibroids, and dangerous bleeding disorders. When a woman goes to the doctor seeking help, the doctor asks, "How many pads or tampons are you soaking through in an hour?" The doctors were basing their medical math on the capacity printed on the side of the box. But because the box was lying, the math was wrong. Millions of women went to their doctors, exhausted, in pain, bleeding through products, only to be told their flow was normal, based on faulty, water-tested metrics. This single corporate shortcut is a massive reason why conditions like endometriosis take an average of 7 to 10 years to be diagnosed. Women weren't just suffering in silence. They were suffering because the science that was supposed to protect them was based on a marketing illusion. The blue liquid wasn't just an advertising choice. It was a reflection of exactly how the medical and corporate worlds view women's health. Something to be minimized, cheapened, and hidden away so the bottom line stays safe. It took until 2023 for someone to finally test a period product with blood. It makes you wonder, what else are they not testing? If you found this interesting, hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what hidden history we should uncover next. Because the truth is always more interesting than the ad campaign. See you next time.